Welcome to Defender Fridays. I see a ton of familiar faces, so I know most of you kind of know what we're about here. But just in case we got any new folks here in attendees, welcome. Defender Fridays is really just an informal gathering of like-minded folks in the defensive side of information security to share concepts, ideas, talk about what's going on, and we try to bring in a seasoned practitioner to be a guest on the show to talk with us. And this week we've got a phenomenal example of that with Wes Lambert. Wes has such a cool background. He's touched so many interesting projects. He's currently with Security Onion, which I'm sure most of you probably know very well what Security Onion's about. But I'm also a huge fan of some of the contributions that Wes has made to one of my favorite projects, which is Velociraptor. And Wes, I was doing a little bit of digging. I found your Medium blog, which I'm gonna finger wag at you and say, hey, it needs some love. But I
It does.
saw I saw though that one of your first posts on your Medium blog was about pairing up Security Onion and Lima Charlie. And I was like, super cool, man. Hey, that's awesome. I didn't even know that you had tinkered with it at that level. So that was cool. But yeah, we'll drop some links for some of Wes's stuff. If you check out his GitHub, you will quickly see he's an avid contributor to a lot of really cool things, and he built out some awesome projects around detection labs with Security Onion, Velociraptor, even using some automation tools like Innate-In. Is that how you say it, by the way? I've never heard that someone say that.
That's how I say it. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
super cool. So Wes, thanks for joining us today, man. Would love to hear what you've been up to and whatever else is on your mind today. And as you know, so we try to keep these fairly informal, bi-directional, encourage folks, please throw your questions into chat, or if you're a panelist already, unmute, come on, ask some questions. If you'd like to become a panelist, where you can simply turn on your camera and your mic on subsequent shows, we'll drop a link in chat here in a little bit that will allow you to do that. But awesome. Thanks for joining us, Wes. What's on your mind
Yeah.
today?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, man. Just been staying busy. Probably a little quieter on the Twitter front. Kind of similar to maybe your case. Just been really busy, not just professionally, but just personally. So things are shifted around a little bit, but still trying to contribute and do good things in the community. But today, just really wanted to kind of chat in general about enterprise security monitoring. When I talk about enterprise security monitoring, really meaning like everything that is encompassed in your enterprise, maybe not physically, right, but things like network traffic, endpoint traffic, cloud data, logs, anything that is basically part of your enterprise's operations, and or any data within that, any activity within the scope of the enterprise or the organization. So um, yeah, I mean that's really just kind of open ended, just you know I guess what I wanted to chat about with you guys. And so I don't know if anybody has any questions in particular, or anything that any particular direction you want to go, Eric, but
I I
happy to
do
chat.
I do have a quick question, but before I
Yeah.
ask it, I want to say nice
Yeah.
shirt. I dig it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Yep.
huge
Yeah.
fan. We've actually had Haroon on the show. So yeah, we're
Okay.
we're big
Awesome.
fans of things. Yeah, great stuff. But anyway,
Awesome.
yeah, I've got a question for you. So, you talk about, enterprise defense and
Mm.
telemetry and data sources, and you also kind of mentioned that's not always going to be just like the physical traditional on-prem stuff.
Right.
Um, but what is your experience, or what are your thoughts around like how well are teams keeping up with the evolution of the types of telemetry that you have to not only ingest but also understand
Yeah.
and be able to write detections for? Because I feel like we have the largest corpus of knowledge around traditional endpoints, traditional infrastructure,
Right.
right? And so a lot of us are pretty good, pretty proficient at kind of endpoint level detection and stuff. But I mean, obviously, organizations are moving more and more and more of these workloads and data to the cloud. Like, how well prepped do you think are most organizations for kind of evolving and maturing and continuing to cover those areas, cloud, SaaS, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's getting better. I don't think it's like awesome. I think a lot of folks, which maybe justifiably, they focus on endpoint first, right? EDR or something, just having something on the box and some monitoring there. I think it's getting better. I think it's still kind of a slow thing. Even if you do have like container or like SaaS level monitoring, just being able to, like you were saying, being able to ingest that is one thing. Being able to handle the volume of data, being able to understand the data and be able to understand it enough to write detections for it, like you're saying. I think it's getting better. I think there are some platforms that are making it a bit easier. Probably like with Lima Charlie, and we try to do the same thing with security and to try to provide something out of the box that makes it a little bit more accessible because it is such a wide array of stuff, right? I mean, stuff from cloud, firewall, endpoint, whatever. Um, it's just a lot, but like I said, I think it's getting a little bit better, but it's just kind of a slow, like, other than just collecting all the logs, but actually doing good things with them and being able to filter and tune and that kind of thing.
I want to
What folks are really going to focus on.
I want to bring a comment out of chat here
Yeah.
and put a voice to it. Ben, excellent point, man. Excellent point. Ben says in chat, it's not just about cloud detection, but also cloud response, as that's basically
Right.
its own discipline. Wholeheartedly agree, right? And I think that that's kind of the crawl, walk, run of the process. Is folks realize that okay, we need telemetry from all these other places as well. CloudTrail, GCP, Azure, Intra ID, M365 Defender,
Mm.
Slack, GitHub, whatever it may be, right? We need to be bringing in telemetry from these other critical business information systems, but the telemetry is just like the first half, right?
Yeah.
How do we then also automate our response? Because that's a problem that's been solved for a long time at the endpoint level, right? Even AV that we like to bash on, AV at least by design, by nature, does some automated response on the endpoint. EDR gets even better at it, right?
Right.
But there is no cloud EDR, right? There's probably a vendor out there that would love to say we are cloud EDR, but like really what it is it's a detection that triggers an API call, to remedy a situation. And
Right.
you're right, that's a whole other discipline, Ben.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Ben, you want to expand on that any? Because I think that's a really important concept.
Well, cloud kind of turns a lot of what we do on the endpoint on its head a little bit because you have the entire control plane available in the same place that all the operating plane is available. And if you're not handling both of those things simultaneously, you're not only from a detection standpoint, but your response is half of what it needs to be. And usually you're missing the important half.
Yeah, it doesn't really help to get notification that the horse has successfully escaped the barn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
telemetry without actually like having a human that get like human eyeballs are what attackers fear. They don't fear logs by themselves.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's where it comes into, with a lot of these platforms. Some of them provide the telemetry, right? Like you can get all the telemetry, right? Like maybe just with like standard Elastic Stack or something, right? But being able to go in there and actually be able to work through like the data or be able to correlate certain things like certain events to other events is like a huge piece of it, providing the overall context, right, of like what's happening and being able to know how to respond, right? Other than
Is,
just some sort of like automated kind of remediation type thing.
W- We're in the right area now. Is it a good time to ask for a couple of hot takes? Like what telemetry sources often just fill up logs and don't actually result in actionable responses, like by default, and can they be better, or like how do you want to take that one?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of it really depends. Like if you're collecting like network data, there's a lot of stuff really that can kind of do that. I mean, like Zeek, for example, there's like some duplication in like SSL and like certificate like traffic and stuff like that. And that's, some of it's pretty unnecessary. There's stuff like actual like data from the agent itself, right? Like, so I know with Elastic Agent, for example, there's a lot of data that's just like, there's no way, or there's not like an immediately effective way to filter it out unless you go like do like a data pipeline or something to filter it out. But just like logs, like operational data from the agent itself, which depending on your risk profile and depending on your stance and your ability to retain data, like may be absolutely not important to you. And there's plenty others, but yeah, I mean, I've seen that a lot. Just the agent's operational data.
Yeah. Like I've heard clients push back. no, we can't do sysmon logging because we are all full up on our Splunk license or whatever. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
sorry,
mean,
90% of your logs are just firewall individual connection logs
yeah, that's
or
not
individual
useful.
packet
Yeah.
logs or something stupid.
Yeah. So like, with firewall stuff, right? I mean, there's allows or like or so there's different things like that, right? But other things that you might want to focus on are focusing like just network, right? I mean, I know a lot of it's encrypted maybe, but HTTP, DNS, right? Like how to focus on still connection for like metadata type stuff. Um, but it really comes down to just filtering what's best, for the organization, and like what offers the most bang for your buck for the visibility.
Something that something we were talking about a moment ago, and we're talking about kind of like the necessity for not only cloud detection but also response. I think a lot of folks forget that a lot of this telemetry is readily available. What's not as clear is what within that telemetry is even worth alerting on.
Right.
And the use case that came to mind for me was the latest Okta breach, if you guys remember, not too long ago,
Mhm.
also impacted Cloudflare, Beyond Trust, and 1Password.
Yeah.
And when I was reading into 1Password, their discovery of the breach, right? They were a downstream victim of the Okta breach. What was kind of incredible was how they discovered the breach. They had gotten into 1Password's Okta admin portal.
Mhm.
So threat actor is in their IDP, right? And they didn't detect that. They didn't detect anything other than when the threat actor went and generated a report of all administrative users, right? And it was somebody got an email about that report getting generated, right? And they said, "That's weird. I didn't request that report. Like, why did that happen?" But like, it could be the simplest thing, the easiest thing, but it's going through and thinking of these use cases, like baselining, like what is normal, and it's the same stuff we've been doing for decades on endpoints. But
Mhm.
nobody's thinking now about how we need to reapply that in other key areas.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, especially with identity and the whole issue there, especially recently. Yeah, I mean it's hard to say. I mean, you can say like in general what to log, but a lot of it's like you're saying is baselining and really identifying from a visibility perspective and cost perspective what makes sense.
People make fun of it, but like the silly things like that attackers tend to do that real world users running who am I, we you attackers don't know what gets them caught. They don't know that it was the report that sent an email. But it's really common. Like it's stupid common for attackers to say, "Hey, wait, am I domain admin in this command prompt properly? Let me do a directory listing against the domain controller C share. If yes, then I'm domain admin." It doesn't matter that it's a legit command. It matters that it's indicative of this is something you should pay further attention to.
Yeah. Yeah,
One of
agreed.
one of the things that I heard that the Slack security team does, um, it's surprisingly simple and yet very effective. They basically have watchers set up on all all their endpoints, all their Linux systems around the world. Anytime somebody elevates privileges, so a sudo command would trigger this thing. It fires a webhook into a channel, and they have to deconflict, right? Like, yep, that was me. Yep, that was me, right? Like that was intentional. I did that. And I mean, obviously, that's not something you'd want to have a high volume kind of flood, but like
Yeah.
you got to appreciate that because think about it. Like any attacker lands on one of those boxes, it does anything attempting to elevate. There's going to be an instant sort of notification. Everyone looks at it and says, "That's not us." Right? And there you have it. So yeah, there's just so many clever things to think about there.
Yeah, I mean that makes me think about also I talked about this a little bit, and it's not anything new. But having like honey commands, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, like aliasing commands and then like sending like a Slack notification, right? So that's
and that's
another
a
one. Right?
and that's I think thinks Canary Tokens has
Yeah.
a honey
It's my
command
very
option, right?
favorite. Sensitive commands token is my very favorite. It essentially replaces who am I with report back that someone ran who am I and then run who am I.
Yep.
So it's
Yep. That's all.
transparent to the attacker. It's so wonderful. It's my very favorite. I point out nltest.exe because essentially zero admins run it, but it's very common to have an attacker playbooks. What are the domain controllers in this domain and what are their IPs? really useful for attackers, pre-existing binary, Microsoft signed, but super useful to add that first detective control for.
I just want to have a full 30 minutes where Jeff talks about who am I.
Everyone's always asking who am I, but they never ask how am I.
How am I.exe? That's our next. That's going to be our next LOL, Ben.
That's the next detection. I'm just going to go write one for how am I, and I'm going to catch Jeff Duncan every single time. Unk 7,242 or whatever it is. Here we go. It's Jeff Duncan. Got him.
And we're gonna go from threat intelligence to emotional threat intelligence.
Oh, I thought you were going to say to threat intelligence to Jeff intelligence.
Oh, man.
No, those two are one and the same.
I like the why am I existential crisis intelligence.
It's almost along the same lines of those threat actors who, one of my other favorite things to look for is just a little bit in the same vein, but we don't dump browser history as much as we should from compromised systems. But one of my favorites is when you run into an adversary who's like, cool, wow, I actually got access here. How do I run some of these tools that I've gotten there? Browser history is a weird one to take a look at, but anytime you're on a system like that, and you're like, wait a second, hold on, there's a lot of clues here about this person didn't know how to run Mimikatz. A good indicator is also looking for, Jeff, I don't know about your thoughts on this one, but a good indicator would also be like someone's comfort level with a tool. So I've seen like Mimikatz just like almost like someone's just like, wait, didn't work. And it's like, okay, this one actually worked. And it's not like they were dumping different types of credentials. It's literally didn't know. They were
testing
earlier
it
this
broad.
week. I forgot to do privilege debug, so my pass the hash wasn't working. I'm like, damn it, googling furiously. I'm like, oh crap. Since at this point we've hijacked and going in a completely different world. Sorry.
Threat actors, test and prod. Yeah. All right. So back to enterprise security. Hey, Wes, I would love to get your take. So I'm fairly familiar with Security Onion, but I also know that it's evolved significantly over the years. Just for the folks on this call that maybe aren't as intimately familiar with it, what's the high level overview, and who would be a solid candidate for tinkering with Security Onion?
Yeah. So the high level overview, it's a free and open platform for enterprise security monitoring, threat detection, just being able to collect network, endpoint, like I mentioned before, cloud, whatever types of telemetry, things like Sysmon, just really like firewall, anything. But being able to sit through that like effectively, right, through doing a workflow that analysts can feel comfortable with and be able to pivot across different types of data, be able to correlate things fairly easily, and be able to get that context quickly. It's got like Zeek, you might be familiar with Zeek, Suricata, Stenographer for full PCAP, Strelka you might be familiar with for file metadata, extraction or producing that to go alongside the network and endpoint data. And it's built on top of the Elastic stack, so you've got all the Elastic stuff there. But yeah, it's really just meant to be an easy way for folks to collect and review that data and be able to respond with that effective context. So if you want to mess around with it, it's just anybody really. I mean, we have folks, college students, we have folks in different courses, we have professionals. It's really anybody can mess with it and really get some good stuff out of it. We also have a lot of cool free YouTube videos for you to go through, and if you want to mess with the platform. So it's just a lot of stuff for everybody, I think, and it's just real fun to go through there and do all the things.
I still think that more organizations, like it's the most terrifying thing is getting started, but take an old server that has two network interfaces, plug one into a span port, and just start seeing some traffic. The Zeek plus like Rita style analysis, there's going to be some tasty bits just to get started. There's a hell of a lot more to Security Onion, but any old server will do for getting started.
And you'll definitely, it's like turning the lights on, right? Like, I mean, maybe you haven't done that before on your network, but you definitely find some interesting things, if not scary things. But it's a good time.
Yeah, and don't be, and something I would throw out to anybody considering doing that kind of thing for the first time is don't be intimidated or put off by the noise that's inevitably going to flow through the floodgate there, because it is sifting through that noise that allows you to build proficiency. Folks that kind of, oh boy, this is a lot. Fail to ever get over the hump of being able to harness that and to tune it and get it to where the signal to noise ratio is much more acceptable for effective detection, hunting, response activities. So yeah, it's huge fan of that approach. Love that, Security Onion's been around for a long time and it's been open source all, its whole life. And it's got an awesome collection of tools. You mentioned Stenographer for
Mhm.
PCAP. I have not
Yeah.
used that one. Is that
Mhm.
is that something similar to like Archemy?
So Archemy uses Elasticsearch, I think, for indexing like PCAP statistics. Honestly, I've never used Archemy at
Okay.
length.
Okay.
So are you pulling like raw transcripts, or is it just
It's
like the metadata about
No,
the?
it's so
Yeah.
it's both. So it's
Both.
pulling full PCAPs, writing those
Okay.
to disk, but then you're
Okay.
right, it is parsing and indexing
Mhm.
all of the metadata out of the PCAPs into Elastic. So you have both. You have the
Right.
Elastic front end to search the metadata to view conversations, but then you expand that conversation, you're staring at the PCAP data.
Right.
So it's a little bit of both. I was just curious if you knew what the differences were, or what they
Yeah.
chose one over the other.
Yeah. So Stenographer was written. It was written to write PCAP very quickly. So like if you've got, like 10 gig sensors, whatever, like you're trying to like split up like a 40 gig link or something and among a few sensors, and you need something that writes PCAP fast. It does that, and it also does index PCAP. So whenever you're performing retrieval, it's indexed, so it's quicker. It's intended to be quicker. So that's kind of the goal there. And within security, we write the PCAP to disk, but you can also pull the transcript kind of as if you were looking at it in Wireshark kind of in the UI. And then comparatively to like the Elasticsearch indexing, like you're talking about, we have the Zeek metadata like con, DNS, HTTP, all that stuff that correlates to that, and you can pivot back, back and forth to the from the record to the PCAP and that kind of thing.
Here's my hot take. Well, it's a question, but I'm
Yep.
I'm I'm angling for a hot take here. Um, in your opinion, okay, if I'm getting started in enterprise monitoring, and I've got all these decisions to make about, what kind of network security tool should I buy, what kind of endpoint security tool should I buy, and I've got this seam where I can send all these logs. How do you feel about the prioritization of network versus endpoint visibility? Should I split that 50-50? Do you have thoughts on that? I do,
Um,
but I want to hear yours first.
I think it's tough because network. I mean, you get a lot of bang for the buck, right? Like as far as setting up just a span port, right? You're not having to deploy like 1,000 agents to the one segment or whatever. You kind of get a lot of bang for the buck. You miss like some of the low level activity off the bat. So my preference would probably be to stand up something off the span port first and then gradually roll out agents. But that's kind of how I would roll.
I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that, but primarily in a situation where it's a fairly simple network. Because if
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
hundreds of switches, right,
Right.
the span
Yeah.
port only
Yeah.
covers one of them. So, but I like that though. I like that. If I've got a simple network, you're right. That's actually a pretty low barrier to
Yeah.
just get that span port up and running. Throw a little network sensor on there. That's easier than pushing agents out to systems. But
Right.
um, my thoughts on it, and I'd love to hear from Bromley, Jeff, whoever else has thoughts. My thoughts are the days of network visibility are kind of coming to an end right now. Not saying that the data is not useful. It can be. It's just not as immediately useful as it used to be, right? Like we used to get so much valuable data out of network traffic, and nowadays it's just like the the tunnels are closing, right? But the idea of endpoint visibility generally extends to, hey, look, if I can see what's happening on every one of my endpoints and the telemetry is top notch, that's also key. Got to have solid telemetry or all bets are off. But if I have solid telemetry on all my endpoints, then I will generally understand what's happening on the network, right? Now, it's kind of like the concept of herd immunity, right? Not everybody has to have the agent, not the TV in the conference room computer
Right.
maybe doesn't have the agent, but if everything else is fairly well covered, I'm not going to miss anything critical on this network, even if I can't see every packet flying across it. That's my
Mm.
opinion on the matter. Anybody else have a take?
I've often, I hate giving computer science answers, but I've often gone the route of like, understand what it is you're trying to defend or detect against, and then prioritize from there. So if you have a massive Windows environment and you're like, okay, I need to start somewhere with all this stuff, right? Then endpoint visibility and good endpoint telemetry, even if it's just the sysmon, without going down that road too much, is going to be a good starting point. And then be like, okay, well, there is a gap in coverage here of, you know, a certain network, or we have a large IoT presence or something like that. Then I'm going to go use networking to help kind of cover that gap, right? But am I going to go and look at and install networking and be like, all right, I'm going to base my entire detection mechanism off J3 or J4 or whatever whatever JA wants to release these days? Am I going to go base an entire thing off of that and whatnot? That's probably not where I'd put most of my resources in development, right? That being said, I would take another look at a network and say, well, okay, I've got I've got an OT-IT segment, or you know, I've got an OT-IT connection that maybe shouldn't be there or is tightly controlled. I've got a ton of IoT devices. Maybe I've got a bunch of non-standard operating systems where there's not really good EDR support. The network's going to become your least common denominator across those. And I'm going to recommend to folks, like, then networking has to become maybe not a priority, but it's a 51-49 or 60-40 at that point, because it is going to be the thing where you can get the most coverage in one spot, right?
Yeah.
I look at it as a blend.
I feel like every pen test I have ever has a finding of there are more machines with Chrome and 7-zip than there are with your AV EDR security tooling. There will always be boxes that don't have that security tooling. So
That's right.
It's bottom down or top down or bottom up, some of each. You're going to get a heck of a lot of bang for your buck with those first few spots doing the network if you're mostly been focusing on the security tooling on the endpoint.
Yeah.
They're hard to tell, but there are plenty of attackers that, like the beaconing activity. I'm sorry, but I harp on that. Rita and the free now community edition of the Rita Big Brother tool.
AC
anyway,
Hunter.
AC Hunter, thank you.
Yeah.
It is wonderful to get started. Yes, you will find some loud stuff, but sure, you found some forgotten pings. You're still going to learn. And the vast majority of attackers are, in fact, beaconing. So it doesn't matter what they're beaconing to. It matters that you get to learn about your environment. Maybe it's finding something bad. Maybe it's learning about your environment. Take your win.
Yeah, and even from the visibility perspective, I mean, some folks, maybe do TLS interception, but I think, like you guys are saying, it really depends. Like, it's just that I don't think there's a, one size fits all answer, but there's a lot of different ways it could go.
Yeah, TLS interception brings its own problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the days of that are numbered as well,
Yeah.
because so many things are starting to do certificate penning. It's not. I just don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah.
But yeah, solid points all around. Love that. Thanks for that perspective, guys. Super cool. Hey, folks, just so you don't miss it, be sure you check out the link in Slack, or the link in Zoom chat about Slack. If you want to join our Slack, that's where we announce the weekly winner of a Defender Fridays t-shirt. I know several folks on this call have already received one now at this point, and hopefully, over the course of time, we get every single one of you rocking a t-shirt. But you have to be present in Slack to win. That's where we announce the winner. So just be sure to join us there. Wes, any last thoughts here before we wrap up?
I just appreciate being able to come on and chat with you guys, and I just had a good time.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Awesome, great conversation as always. Thanks for everybody for showing up, saying hello, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. Guest to be determined. All right. Have a great Friday, everybody.
Thanks, Wes.
All right. Later, guys.
Goodbye,
Thanks.
friends.
Bye.